All right, thanks for those voice notes that you've sent through. Well, let me invite our guest for Municipal Watch today, Miyelani Holeni is Chief Group Advisor at Ndiso Consulting. He's a local government revenue and governance expert. Miyelani, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Kathy, and good morning to the listeners. Thank you for having me again.
So today our focus is going to be on service delivery and really the performance of the sixth administration when it comes to service delivery. We know that we have three spheres of government and each of them are judged sort of according to their own merit, local, provincial and national. At the same time, however, Miyelani, these three spheres of government, as independent as they are also very intertwined, right? They're supposed to be working in some kind of synchrony in order to ensure that we as South Africans get the best service delivery possible. When we rate service delivery, Miyelani, what are some of the performance indicators or markers that we can look at that tell us whether a government is doing well or a government is doing badly?
So I think, Kathy, it's fair to also reflect on the statement that you opened with, that the three spheres of government equals one government for South Africa. And that being said means that, all of those spheres each have a specific role that we'll delve into. However, that performance of government cannot be measured only by one sphere of government's performance. It needs to be measured throughout, all of the spheres working together in tandem, in alignment. So the performance of government, for instance, I think we must just also go back, pre-democracy, and reflect on the fact that, South Africa, was settled in huge debt. In that stage, I think public debt in 1994 was sitting at about 50% of GDP. They were running a deficit of about 7.3% of GDP. But what subsequently happened was after the democracy and the changes and the transformation that was set about, it became apparent that the country is bigger than the smaller urban areas that were being served, and that the budget needed to cover all of those different areas. I think that is the genesis of service delivery within South Africa for all the spheres of government. The three spheres of government, their own complexity notwithstanding, is the fact that each one must be able to reach the citizen. And I think that's the first measure. Do the services that are required of the citizen, do they down to the specific citizen down on the ground? And you can then take it from department by department, service by service. If you take Home Affairs, for instance, do people are getting their IDs, those that must get their passports, are they getting the same? And moving on to health, is there access, to a medical facility? Are the medicines at those facilities? And also going through the provinces who must deliver some of the services that must go to the consumers as well as local government. So the success, I think, overall, if we sum it up, is are the services having a positive impact on the citizen? Are they receiving the services? And of course comes the issue of infrastructure, which is the backbone of the country. Is that infrastructure being rolled out in such a way that it is inclusive and it facilitates economic exchange of goods, it facilitates movement of people, and facilitates other opportunities that the citizen can look back and say, my quality of health is good, quality of education has improved, living standard measure has improved, and all of those measures. And then we can measure the mortalities, we can measure, the jobs, and so on and so forth. But I think the success of government in its three spheres needs to concentrate on the impact that it has on the citizen.
We're going to continue this conversation in a moment.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on The Talking Point. We're reflecting on the state of service delivery during the sixth administration, but also, looking at the role of your provincial and national governments in the delivery of services too. I know that this is usually Municipal Watch, where we focus solely on what is happening at a local government level. Miyelani, there have been incredible failures that have been noted at a local government level, right? Where issues just based on what you were saying around how we measure or rate performance. If we're to equate that to services reaching people, just on that basic level, where there are failures because there are lots of services that are not reaching people. How do we see the failure of local government in some instances then play into what become the failures of provincial and ultimately national government?
I think rather if we look at the local government sphere, and all of us have agreed that this is where the rubber hits the road, and this is a sphere that nothing would happen. I mean, national can plan policies, province can channel grants, but those grants are ultimately going into a local government space, which is a municipality, which is a ward, where people ultimately are residing within those areas. I think the issues with local government, and I think to reflect on the differences with regards to how the national transfer happens, we speak of how the transfer from the fiscus goes, 45% roughly there goes to the national sphere, about 43% goes into the provincial sphere, and then the difference, goes into local government. So between 8 and 9, sometimes, maximum of 11% end up trickling down to the local government sphere. So if you then look at how local government must be managing its affairs through the assumption of the local government white paper, is that they should be raising 70% of their revenue from the residents or the users of the services that they are rendering. Now, it's not the case in all the municipalities. If you look then at rural type municipalities or the ones that are outside of the major centers, about 70% of their budget is made up of grants. Coming into the urban side, about 24%, and even less in some of the metros. If you line up, the metros, number one metro in the country being Johannesburg, eThekwini, Cape Town, at Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, and so on. If you look at how those budgets ultimately get into reach them as equitable shares. For instance, I think Tshwane may be getting in the region of about not more than 5 billion, for instance. Of course, there are conditional grants and there are other aspects. But you look then at how much money flows into those municipalities. Those assumptions have proved not to be true. And so local government then has to make do with raising money from residents, where sometimes residents are not able to pay, or they are not paying, or there's affordability issues, or there's distressed, they are distressed in their own. So local government then has to then deliver the services of water, for electricity, make sure the street lights are there, the libraries are there, the swimming pools are serviced, and all of those things, the roads, which are internal. So the failure of local government, I guess, is how we describe it as, local government is a sphere that, you can, you feel it, if there are things, that, are happening, you touch it by switching on the electricity, and if it comes on or opening the tap, you taste it by drinking the water and seeing the water is of good quality. You feel it because you walk on the road and see if, and so on and so forth. So local government has got that conundrum of having on the one end to raise money from residents, as well as to make sure that it deliver the services using some of the money that comes from the grants from province as well as national. So the failures of local government, I guess, are more apparent to anyone. If there's if there are potholes, it's more apparent. If there's a sewer running down the street, it's more apparent. And all of those, if refuse is not collected, there's a stench. So local government, I think, sits, in that difficult position where everything is one step away, from kind of, falling apart. If things are working well, of course, great, things are working well. If traffic lights are not working, you feel it because then there'll be traffic. So I think the success of local government is we've always spoken about the basics, and I think we've lost, the definition of what the basics are for local government, which is to deliver services that are used by the citizenry on a daily basis and do it well. And then you can look at, the secondary services that the citizens would love to have. But the core of it is that those basic services of supplying water, making sure the roads are tarred, making sure that the electricity is on, there are no blackouts, because of caused by the municipality for that matter. And of course, we understand the issue of load shedding and so on. So that is, I think, the success of local government, to be able to give those basic services to everyone, and then including the indigents as well, who are sitting and are perhaps are not able to afford. So those free basic services that are ultimately afforded to the indigents within the community, then you can measure that local government is succeeding. And then the other things can start being layered on top of that. I think the difficulty here is that if we start not getting the basics right, local government has already failed, in its starting steps.
Miyelani, service delivery and just having good service delivery does not happen on its own. There are other tenets that need to be in place. Those are looking at matters of administration and governance, looking at leadership and management, and really ensuring that you have the right capacity to deliver services. Do you think that where things are now, there is intent around equipping administration, equipping leadership, making sure that there's proper planning and monitoring that will lead to good service delivery?
I think the question of intent, I would certainly hope that, whichever government is the one that is governing in any of the municipalities, especially across local, the intent has to be perfect. The intent is enshrined in the Constitution, is enshrined in the Municipal Systems Act, is enshrined in the Municipal Finance Management Act, is enshrined in all of the legislation that goes into supporting local government. So the issue of intent is one that is even, if you may, forced upon, or at least so vivid that no one should be able to deviate from that particular intent. Now, the issue that we're getting down to is what we always speak about of capability. Capability is the leadership that you have in the area, the strategies and the quality of those strategies that they come up with to be able to organize and plan for service delivery, as well as now the actual operations of delivering the services. Now, what we have seen over the years is we've seen a revolving door of skilled people who would have loved to ply and their skills and service, within local government, coming in and going out, or at least moving around from municipality to municipality,
All right.
trying to find.
Miyelani, I'm going to pause you there. Apologies. I'll give you an opportunity to continue on the other side of the 10:30 news headline.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're reflecting on the performance of the sixth administration when it comes to service delivery. And our guest this morning, Miyelani Holeni, is the Group Chief Advisor at Ndiyiso Consulting. He's also a local government revenue and governance expert. So, Miyelani, before we went to news, I was getting your reflections on the humans, ultimately, that are put in positions at an administrative leadership, planning and monitoring level that ultimately have to make sure that we do get service delivery, and the extent to which we have the right capacity of individuals in these positions.
Yeah. So I think to complete the point, I think where it starts, and it should be at least the master planning side for service delivery. And it doesn't matter if you are at a local government or you're at a provincial government or you're at a national government, to have master plans that define exactly what the services are that needs to be rolled out, informs how the budgets are going to be put together, informs the type of skills that are required, whether you are going to source those skills internally or externally. But importantly is that in local government, you have a deficiency currently of planners. And by planners, we're talking about those people that would be sitting in a corner looking at the cities, concerned about, how the city is going to look like 50 years from now on, and ensuring that those plans, as they come to a milestone date, are then put into play and are then submitted through whether the IDP or through the normal budgetary process, such that they can get funding. And that is the most important function, because what we're seeing with service delivery is you can go and build a lot of different houses, but if you have not planned for the infrastructure ahead of time, you can have RDP houses that are sitting there without services. You're sitting there without streets and sitting there without electrical connections or water connections and the like. So the issue that sits here is the coordination and making sure that that planning is done in a detailed manner and that it receives the necessary support from all of the different spheres of government, as well as the internal departments within municipalities, as well as, now that we have the district development model, that district development model, the one plan is then applied for that for those master plans across the different municipalities. So I think the issues of planning, there's a deficiency. The issues of technical skills that are sitting within municipalities, especially the engineers, the various artisans that must be there. There is a revolving door of an in and out, where some people at least are going into the private sector looking for opportunities or going into other municipalities. So you continuously are seeing movement and not stability in some of the municipalities. And the lack of stability is also a crucial issue that is causing service delivery to be hampered, because there is no continuity from there on. Then taking into the financial side of things as well, we'll see in the AG's report, as the AG reflects on an annual basis, the state of where local government is, where the audits are, and that can be used as a proxy of where the municipalities are sitting in terms of their ability to governance and their ability to govern, or at least to run a well-governed administration is important, because all of the documents that must flow through the system, the approvals that must be made ahead of time, the advertisements that must be done according to legislation. So the complexity, I think, if we dwell a little bit on local government, is that there are many factors that must come together, and they require skilled and highly experienced individuals in their technical fields or in their disciplines where they should be. And they need at least a stable and well-governed, municipality that will be able to also support them through oversight. So that is where service delivery can be. And you'll appreciate that, even now up to the metros, we're seeing that, there's been a degradation of service delivery in as much as new infrastructure is being built, but the maintenance of that infrastructure tends to become a problem because it's not properly budgeted for, and it's not properly then put into a particular schedule of maintenance. So those are some of those moving parts, that says if you plan properly, you have the right skills, right experience, right positions, as well as stable governance within the municipality, and the financial skills are also there. You are able to run at least a municipality that can deliver on the basics and start looking at delivering now on the more things that create the growth, that create the local economic development and create more opportunities for investment within that particular municipality. So I think that is the sum total of where municipalities are. but they're still struggling with water quality, still struggling with water supply, still struggling with electricity, not taking up, for instance, the 100 megawatt, of renewable energy that has been given, that has been promulgated, and to create energy and to become generators of electricity. So those are some of those things that should be taken up at the next tier to be able to drive municipalities forward. Look, provinces, I think, sit in the middle, and at times, a lot, of us, wonder what is the role of provinces? But provinces can play a critical role with regards to supporting local government, as well as ensuring that what is planned at the policy level at national is fully supported and can be realized and can be given a lot more depth, as well as enhancement of the planning and so on. So that is where I think the state of local government is, and the stats are there from Stats SA in terms of where, for instance, access to electricity is, access to formal dwellings, and those are great stats. But we believe that there's also then the consistency that needs to be applied across the board in ensuring that if you say 88.5% of South Africans are in formal dwellings, those dwellings are at least serviced. If you say 94% of people, South Africans, have access to electricity, it must then switch on. Access as well as having electricity that is on consistently. There's a big difference between the two. And you can do the same for water at 82.4%. Does the water run consistently? And so on and so forth.
In being part of this cycle, right, of the national election and the provincial elections taking place, it's often difficult to see how whatever decisions we make at a provincial or local level are going to ultimately affect what happens at at a provincial and national level, are going to affect what happens at a local level. But are you able to clarify that for us, Miyelani? Does it matter who is in government provincially and nationally for what happens at a local level? And if it does, in what ways do those links happen?
Absolutely. I think for me is the question of who perhaps is one that I may not be able to answer intelligently because obviously I'm not a political scientist. But I think the question of how that government when it's then appointed is able to espouse on the different policies that sit within the various departments. Let me just tell you, I think in the conversations that we've had, even together, Kathy, we've reflected, and even some of the conversations, we've reflected on the fact that South Africa, with a vision, with a plan that is followed, which is resourced, which has everyone buying into that particular plan. And you're not sitting with a situation of, I have a plan, this one has a plan, but those plans are well aligned. And taking the budget machinery that we have and the state machinery in terms of procurement, we really have resources that, if they are directed in the way that the vision, the plan, whether it's the NDP, or whether it's, whichever plan that is adopted, for the country, the budgets that can be put behind such a plan, directed and not misappropriated, can result in huge development across South Africa. And we've seen it with how, for instance, when the 1994 started of the reconstruction and development planning, we've also gone into maybe perhaps some phases of the gears, the ASKISAs, all of those different plans that are being put forward. The idea of having elections at national as well as provincial level, I suppose, is for us to look at who is going to be able to do the job that South Africa requires. But the question then is, how are they going to do it? Do they have the necessary wherewithal regarding plans, the ability to direct resources, the ability to control and eliminate crime, the ability to plan, the ability to attract foreign direct investment, and the ability to manage the purse and to distribute the purse, the ability to monitor that money, ultimately the 1 rand that is promulgated in the budget ultimately touches, someone within a locality. I think that is the point of where things are at. So I suppose the importance of having the elections is perhaps a chance for all of the citizenry to be able to review where service delivery is. And if we're not happy as the citizenry, let us make alternatives as well as different choices perhaps, or the same choices, or whichever way that we look at it, to be able to put leaders that are going to focus on how to grow the economy, how to build the infrastructure of South Africa, how to create jobs, how to reduce the inequality, how to eliminate poverty, and so on. So I think the issue of elections is crucial because it is a mandate that we should be giving to people that at least are going to live as well as, I suppose, follow that mandate to the point where each and every aspect, which is a desire for South Africans, is implemented, starting with the basics. So it is important because the national government and national treasury, they will define the budget, but they will not define a budget or come up with a budget in isolation from where the needs are. And the needs will come from the various departments. They will not do it in isolation from where the provinces are, because the provinces must deliver in terms of, the healthcare. They must deliver in terms of, pharmaceuticals. They must deliver in terms of, various things that, they are a conduit for. So the issue here is that these elections that we are sitting with start to define as well for us how local government could look like when we also head for the elections, and what the imperatives are that citizens should be looking out for.
All right. Thanks for that contribution, Miyelani. I want to bring in some of our listeners to this conversation. I'll kick it off with Craig. Craig, you're in Robertson. Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you. Go for it, Craig.
Listen, we've been doing research over many years and looking at service delivery, and the problem that we're facing in South Africa is that if one looks at some of the research done by the HSRC, the general population is just very, very unhappy at the moment with service delivery. And from a political point of view, it's going to be a while before we look at significant change where the political parties really start to focus on the values of South Africans. So let's just park that. But in terms of service delivery, there is a critical factor which is missing. We've got all of these legislation, which includes the integrated development plans, the geospatial plans, and so forth. But there is a critical aspect that is missing, and that is what I would call community-based development. Now, what that means is that if you're a local government, you have to engage with your communities, and the municipalities will say that they are doing it, but they're not really. And that you have to have a mechanism by which communities are participating in structures effectively within the local municipality to ensure accountability. And until we get that right, we are not going to see the levels of development and growth within our economy as what we are talking about. That's the contribution I'd like to make.
Craig, one would think that engaging the community at a local government level is it's an obvious. If you're not engaging the community, then who else are you engaging? So the fact that there's even a need to state that we need community-based development shows just how much of a deviation there has been.
Exactly. And I don't think it's, I think that once we start to establish structures, and we've done research for government to look at what we call intergovernmental relations to make sure that the departments from national, provincial, and local work together. We've also looked at it from a point of view of stakeholder strategies, making sure that at the different tiers of government, one then ensures that the different key stakeholders within a local municipality are participating, whether it be private sector, communities, or traditional authorities. There needs to be representation, and they then need to hold the local municipality accountable to what they're doing. I mean, I've been into a local municipality where we've had a ward councillor and we've had traditional leaders request a meeting with the LED manager, and as observers we watched, and you could clearly see that the traditional leader was going, no, hold on. The ward councillor doesn't necessarily represent my interests here. And you're not listening to us. And the local municipality official says, listen, I'll take this RDP document and we're going to show you this RDP document. My comment was that RDP document in English? Yes, it was. And you're talking about this very thick document. No, we've got to get it down to the basics, and we've got to have mechanisms by which communities in our country hold the municipalities accountable. We're doing research in Aratamba, for example, and, nearly 2 billion rand was allocated by the national government towards Aratamba because it is one of the pilot areas for the district development model of the national government. Now, where has that money gone? It hasn't been utilized to bring about economic development, opportunity for small, medium enterprises within those areas. And the reason being is that there is no mechanism by which communities, and that would include traditional authorities, other communities within Aratamba, have got any mechanism of holding that local municipality or that district municipality accountable for where they are spending their money, and if they are squandering the money, that they are held accountable for that as well.
All right. Craig, thank you for that contribution. And which organization are you with, Craig?
We work for a company called Geoscope. It's a market research company that focuses on looking at political spheres and government spheres and so forth. So we will be monitoring with the Human Sciences Research Council next week. We will be monitoring the voting and talking to people across the country in terms of their perspectives as to whether the elections are free and fair. And it's one of the most amazing things that we do have with an institution like the Independent Electoral Commission, where we're really asking South Africans, do you believe that what has just happened in this election is free and fair? And that is a very, very positive story for South Africa.
Sure, Craig. It sounds like you do a lot of interesting work. Thank you for calling in and sharing some of that insight.
Thanks, Kathy.
Sure. Craig is out in Robertson in the Western Cape. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm back with more calls and your WhatsApp voice notes, and then I'll also bring Miyelani in.
Kathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Percy, you're calling us from Limpopo. Your contribution this morning.
No, thanks very much. Let me welcome what has been presented, but start by saying that government provides services within limited resources. However, one needs to also make a contribution and question certain things so that there would be answers in the process.
Percy, please switch off your radio. I'm getting an echo from you.
My apology.
Yeah,
my apology. I was saying certain issue would relate to issues as raised and try to attach some questions for clarity. But of course, we should be able to appreciate that local government is a third sphere of government, as prescribed. Is a distinct and interrelated in its functioning with other spheres of government, and therefore some would provide support so that local government is able to be effective and so on. But how do you then deal with that becomes the issue that I think we must then answer, because there are mechanisms that have been created in order to ensure that the three spheres of government are able to complement each other and be able to provide services to the people. But of course, we must also take into consideration that now that the basket has been enlarged, where because we were able to provide services to urban as indicated, and now we are now providing services to rural areas. What needs to be done to ensure that there's capacity in relation to the revenue raising capacity as indicated of our municipalities, so that as and when we keep on ensuring that people who are able to pay services get services, but we are also able to make an impact on the people on the ground, on rural areas.
Okay.
We then deal with that. But the last point that that I wanted to speak to is in relation to education. Is our education being transformed to an extent that we are able to meet the needs and the skills of the day? As he has indicated that there's a lack of government planners. Have we done that?
All right, Percy, I'm going to have to pause it there. You've made the point. Thank you for that contribution. Magdalene, you're in Bloom. Good morning.
Morning, Katie and the listeners. Katie, number one, when I was doing public management, mayoring with local government, it was already said, it was between 1990 and the year 2000. It was already said that South Africa has got scarce of resources and the population is high. That is why the apartheid was promoting family planning that time. Number two, where South Africa got distracted is because they never maintained their resources according to their population. Instead, they rushed into opening the borders, whereas at that time, they still have not enough resources for their own population. Number three, the local government is a basic to the community. So every year, it does its own budget planning according to the needs of the people. And it's supposed to apply accordingly. Instead, what do? They shift the budget. So there's no way that you can shift the budget. And then what about the gap that you are opening? There's no way that you can close that gap. It will remain opening. And the last thing is that they had to remove the skilled people. The CFOs who were intellectual and who knew what they're supposed to do were removed from the job. Even the employees who knew what they're supposed to do, they were removed from their jobs.
Okay.
And in that fashion, how can you work with people who don't know anything? Because people wanted to loot.
All right, Magdalene, we're going to have to leave it there. Miyelani, we're completely out of time. A quick wrap from you.
Well, I think the listeners who contributed, thank you, because they've actually raised, crucial issues. But I think going forward, we ought to focus on this issue of capability, because capability is really the first step of getting the skills, getting the leaders, getting the credible plans. And this is perhaps an opportunity to look at, the plans that are going to be put forward with the new government that is going to be put in. And those plans should be cascaded right down to the local government, and everyone should be able to be buying into those programs. The capability of having leaders that are credible, that are focused, as well as the plans in the strategic nature that they come through, and the people who are able to then deliver those services will be crucial. So I think that's how the service delivery, that's how the administrations can acquit themselves of any of what we have seen perhaps in terms of lacking with regards to certain areas of service delivery.
All right, Miyelani, thanks for that contribution. That's where we wrap it up with that particular conversation. It's time for the latest news.